My mom texted me the morning of my birthday. Skip your plans. We're doing a family game night. When I showed up, they handed me the grill tongs and laughed. Make yourself useful, birthday boy. I cooked for 2 hours while they took photos and played games without me. I just smiled, cleaned up the mess, and left quietly. That night, every single one of their phones lit up at the same time with the surprise I'd been planning for 7 months, and now they regret what they did. I, 32M, was told to skip my plans for a family game night on my birthday. They made me cook while they played. 7 months later, they all found out what I'd really been planning. I should have known something was off when my mom texted me at 7 in the morning on my birthday. The message was brief, almost commanding. Skip whatever plans I had for the evening because they were throwing a family game night. No happy birthday attached. No asking if I was available. Just an expectation that I'd show up. I stared at that text for a long moment, sitting on the edge of my bed in my apartment. The truth was, I didn't have any plans. My girlfriend had broken up with me 3 months earlier, citing that I was too focused on my family and not enough on us. My closest friends had moved to different cities for work. My birthday had become just another day I'd probably spend alone, maybe ordering takeout and watching something mindless on TV. So when my mom extended what I thought was an olive branch, I took it. I told her I'd be there. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. I spent most of it convincing myself that this year would be different. Maybe they'd finally acknowledge that I existed as more than just the dependable one, the one who showed up when they needed something fixed or someone to watch the house while they vacationed. Maybe this game night was their way of celebrating me. I pulled into the driveway just after 6. Cars lined the street. My older brother's truck, my younger sister's sedan, even my uncle's SUV. The whole family was here. My chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to hope. When I walked through the front door, the living room was already buzzing with activity. Board games were spread across the coffee table. My sister was laughing at something on her phone while my brother set up what looked like a card game. My uncle and aunt were opening bottles of wine in the kitchen. Everyone looked up when I entered, and for a brief second, I waited for the surprise, the cake, the acknowledgement. Instead, my mom rushed over and pressed a pair of grill tongs into my hands. She told me the burgers and hot dogs were in the fridge and that I should get started because everyone was starving. My brother laughed and called out that I should make myself useful since it was my birthday. The whole room erupted in chuckles, like it was the funniest joke they'd heard all week. I stood there, tongs in hand, waiting for someone to say they were kidding. Nobody did. My dad glanced over from his spot on the couch and mentioned that the charcoal was already going in the backyard, so I should hurry up before it burned out. My sister didn't even look up from her phone. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I nodded. I smiled even. I told them I'd get right on it. The next 2 hours became a blur of smoke and heat. I stood by the grill in the backyard while laughter floated out through the open windows. I could hear them playing games, shouting over each other, celebrating something I couldn't quite name. Every so often, someone would poke their head out to ask if the food was ready yet, and I'd tell them just a few more minutes. When I finally brought the platters of burgers and hot dogs inside, they swarmed the table like locusts. My mom snapped photos of the spread, praising how good everything looked. My sister posted one to her social media with a caption about family gatherings and good food. Nobody thanked me. Nobody saved me a seat at the table. I ate standing up in the kitchen, a single burger on a paper plate, watching them through the doorway. They'd moved on to charades. My brother was acting something out while everyone shouted guesses. My niece and nephew were curled up on the floor with controllers, playing video games on the TV. It was loud and warm and full of life, and I was completely invisible. After they finished eating, I started cleaning up. I gathered the greasy paper plates, wiped down the counters, hauled the trash outside. My mom walked past me at one point and mentioned that I'd always been so good at cleaning up after everyone. She said it like it was a compliment. By 9 o'clock, I was done. The kitchen was spotless, the grill was cooling in the backyard, and I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. I found my mom in the living room and told her I was heading out. She looked surprised, asking if I wasn't going to stay for cake. I asked what cake she was talking about. She frowned and said they hadn't gotten around to it yet, but they were planning to do something later. I told her I was tired and needed to get home. She shrugged and told me to drive safe. Nobody walked me to the door. Nobody called out a goodbye. I left the same way I'd arrived, alone, unnoticed, unimportant. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't cry or rage or feel much of anything beyond a strange, hollow certainty. This wasn't new. This was a pattern that had been building for years, maybe decades. I'd always been the afterthought, the reliable one who'd show up and do what needed doing without complaint. And I'd let it happen because some part of me kept hoping that if I just tried hard enough, they'd see me. But that night, something shifted. I wasn't hoping anymore. When I got back to my apartment, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I'd been working on something for the past 7 months, something nobody in my family knew about. It had started as a vague idea back in March, crystallized into a plan by June, and by my birthday in October, it was nearly complete. 7 months earlier, I'd been approached by a recruiter for a position in New Zealand. The job was perfect, better pay, better benefits, a chance to work on projects I'd only dreamed about. But more than that, it was 8,000 miles away from the people who'd spent my entire life, making me feel like I didn't matter. I'd gone through the interview process in secret. I'd accepted the offer in secret. I'd arranged for my apartment lease to end, sold most of my furniture to friends or donated it, and prepared for a move I hadn't told a single family member about. The start date was set for early November, just 2 weeks after my birthday. That night, sitting in my apartment, I finalized the last details. I drafted an email to send to my entire family, explaining that I was leaving the country and wouldn't be returning for the foreseeable future. I didn't go into the reasons why. I didn't list the years of being taken for granted or the birthdays spent as an afterthought. I simply told them I'd accepted a job overseas, that I was excited for this new chapter, and that I'd be in touch once I got settled. I scheduled the email to send at exactly midnight on November 1st, the day after I'd land in New Zealand, the day I'd already be too far away for anyone to guilt me into staying. The 2 weeks between my birthday and my departure were surreal. My family called a few times, asking if I could help with various things. My mom needed someone to move furniture. My brother wanted me to watch his kids for an afternoon. My sister asked if I could lend her money. I told them all I was busy, which wasn't a lie. I was packing, tying up loose ends, preparing to disappear. Nobody asked what I was busy with. Nobody seemed to notice that I was slowly erasing myself from their lives. On October 31st, I boarded a plane. The flight was long, uncomfortable, and the most liberating thing I'd ever experienced. I watched the ground fall away beneath me and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope, not the desperate kind I'd clung to in my parents' living room. I landed in Auckland on November 1st, local time. After I cleared customs and checked into my temporary housing, I logged into my email and watched as the scheduled message fired off to my family. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't turn it back on for 3 days. Update 1. When I finally powered my phone on, I had 63 missed calls and over 100 text messages. The voicemails ranged from confused to angry to something that almost resembled panic. My mom wanted to know if this was a joke. My dad demanded I call him immediately. My brother accused me of being selfish and dramatic. My sister sent a string of messages asking how I could just leave without telling anyone, how I could abandon the family like this. I listened to every voicemail. I read every text. And then I responded with a single message to the family group chat, telling them I was safe, I was happy, and I needed space to figure things out. I asked them not to contact me for a while. My mom responded within minutes, asking how long a while meant. I didn't answer. The first few weeks in New Zealand were overwhelming in the best possible way. My new job was challenging, my coworkers were welcoming, and I was living in a place where nobody knew me as the family doormat. I was just myself, no expectations, no history, no obligations beyond the ones I chose. I started hiking on weekends, exploring the mountains and coastlines. I joined a local gaming group and made friends who actually seemed to enjoy my company. I went on dates with people who didn't accuse me of being too focused on my family. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was living instead of just surviving. Back home, my family was spiraling. My sister called my old landlord trying to find out where I'd gone. My brother reached out to mutual acquaintances, asking if anyone had heard from me. My mom left tearful voicemails saying she didn't understand what she'd done wrong, that she just wanted to talk. I felt guilty at first. That old instinct to fix things, to smooth over the discomfort, to make everyone else feel better at my own expense. It was hard to shake. But every time I considered reaching out, I remembered standing in that backyard with grill tongs in my hands while my family laughed without me. I remembered being invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to love me. The guilt faded. By December, the messages had slowed. My family seemed to accept that I wasn't coming back, at least not anytime soon. My mom sent occasional texts asking how I was doing, if I was eating well, if I'd made friends. They were the kinds of questions she'd never asked when I lived 40 minutes away. I responded politely but distantly. I told her I was fine. I didn't elaborate. Christmas came and went. I spent it with coworkers who'd also stayed in Auckland for the holidays. We had a barbecue on the beach, and someone brought a guitar, and we sang off-key while the sun set over the ocean. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. My mom sent a photo of their family gathering. Everyone was crowded around the table, smiling at the camera. I noticed the empty chair where I usually sat. She captioned it with a message about missing me and hoping I'd come home soon. I didn't respond. Update 2. By February, my family's attitude had shifted. The guilt tripping had morphed into resentment. My brother sent a long text accusing me of punishing them for some imagined slight, saying I was being childish and needed to grow up. My sister called me selfish, claiming I'd abandoned them when they needed me most. I almost laughed. They needed me most. Not when I needed them, just when I stopped being available to meet their needs. My mom tried a different approach. She sent messages about how hard it had been without me, how they'd had to hire someone to help with things I used to do, how expensive it was, how much easier it had been when I was around. She didn't seem to realize she was proving my point. I finally responded, telling them that I wasn't punishing anyone. I was living my life, the same way they'd always lived theirs. I reminded them that for 32 years, I'd been the one who showed up, who helped, who sacrificed my time and energy and plans because they asked. And I told them that on my last birthday, when I'd hoped they might finally see me as more than just a useful set of hands, they'd handed me grill tongs and made me cook while they partied without me. I said I wasn't angry. I was just done. The response was immediate and explosive. My brother called me dramatic and accused me of holding grudges. My sister said I was overreacting, that it had just been a joke, that I needed to lighten up. My dad sent a rare message telling me I was being disrespectful and needed to remember everything they'd done for me growing up. My mom's message was the one that hurt most. She said she was disappointed in me, that she'd raised me to be better than this, that family was supposed to stick together no matter what. I wanted to scream that family was also supposed to care, to notice, to make you feel like you mattered. But I didn't. I just muted the group chat and went for a walk along the waterfront. That night, I sat down and wrote a longer message. I explained that I wasn't asking them to apologize or even to understand. I just needed them to respect that I was building a life that made me happy, and that life didn't include being their on-call handyman, babysitter, and emotional support. I told them I still loved them, but I loved myself more now, and I wasn't going to apologize for that. I sent it and then blocked the group chat. Individual messages could still come through, but I wouldn't have to see the collective outrage anymore. The individual messages that trickled in over the following weeks were telling. My sister didn't message at all. My brother sent a half-hearted apology that felt more obligatory than genuine. My dad's message was curt, saying he hoped I knew what I was doing. My mom's message came a week later. She said she'd been thinking about what I wrote, and while she didn't agree with everything, she was trying to understand. She asked if we could talk sometime, just the two of us. I told her I'd think about it. Update 3. It's been almost a year now since I left. I'm still in New Zealand, and I've signed a contract extension with my company. I've built a life here that feels entirely mine, a life where I'm not defined by what I can do for other people, but by who I am when I'm allowed to just exist. I eventually agreed to a video call with my mom. It was awkward at first, both of us dancing around the real issues, but eventually she admitted that she'd never realized how much they'd taken me for granted. She said she always assumed I was happy to help, that I enjoyed being part of the family chaos. She didn't understand that happy to help had become expected to help, and that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a person and started being a function. She cried during that call. So did I. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. My brother and sister haven't come around. They still think I'm being dramatic, that I'm blowing things out of proportion. And maybe from their perspective, I am. But their perspective has never had to include what it feels like to be invisible in your own family. I talk to my mom once a month now. We keep it light, surface level. She asks about my life here, and I tell her about hikes I've done or new restaurants I've tried. She tells me about what's happening back home, and I listen politely. We're rebuilding something, but it's different now. There are boundaries that didn't exist before, and I'm okay with that. A few people have asked if I regret leaving the way I did, without warning, without giving them a chance to make things right. The honest answer is no. I don't regret it. Because if I'd told them I was planning to leave, they would have talked me out of it. They would have promised to change, to do better, and I would have believed them because I always believed them. And then nothing would have changed, and I'd still be standing in that backyard with grill tongs in my hands, invisible. Sometimes people need to lose something before they realize what they had. And sometimes the person they lose needs to lose them first to realize they're worth more than being taken for granted. I'm worth more than that. And I'm finally starting to believe it.